This video is for educational purposes. Minneapolis, officially the city of Minneapolis, is a city in the state of Minnesota and the county seat of Hennepin County. With a population of 429,954, it is the state's most populous city as of the 2020 census. It occupies both banks of the Mississippi River and adjoins St. Paul, the state capital of Minnesota. Minneapolis, St. Paul, and the surrounding area are collectively known as the Twin Cities, a metropolitan area with 3.69 million residents. Minneapolis is built on an artesian aquifer on flat terrain, and is known for cold, snowy winters and hot, humid summers. Nicknamed the City of Lakes, Minneapolis is abundant in water, with 13 lakes, wetlands, the Mississippi River, creeks, and waterfalls. The city's public park system is connected by the Grand Rounds National Scenic Byway. Subscribe to this channel and click the notification bell so you get notified each time we upload a new video. Dakota people originally inhabited the site of today's Minneapolis. European colonization and settlement began north of Fort Snelling along St. Anthony Falls, the only natural waterfall on the Mississippi River. The city's early growth was attributed to its proximity to the fort and the falls providing power for industrial activity. Minneapolis was the 19th century lumber and flour milling capital of the world, and as home to the Federal Reserve Bank of Minneapolis has preserved its financial clout into the 21st century. A Minneapolis Depression-era labor strike brought about federal worker protections. Work in Minneapolis contributed to the computing industry, and the city is the birthplace of General Mills, the Pillsbury brand, Target Corporation, and of Thermo King Mobile Refrigeration. The city's major arts institutions include the Minneapolis Institute of Art, the Walker Art Center, and the Guthrie Theater. For professional sports teams play downtown. Prince is survived by his favorite venue, the First Avenue nightclub. Minneapolis is home to the University of Minnesota's main campus. The city's public transport is provided by Metro Transit, and the International Airport, serving the Twin Cities region, is located towards the south on the city limits. Residents adhere to more than 50 religions, and thousands choose to volunteer their time. Despite its well-regarded quality of life, Minneapolis faces a pressing challenge in the form of stark disparities among its residents, arguably the most critical issue confronting the city in the 21st century. Governed by a mayor-council system, Minneapolis has a political landscape dominated by the Minnesota Democratic Farmer Labor Party, DFL, with Jacob Fry serving as mayor since 2018. Two indigenous nations inhabited the area now called Minneapolis. Archaeologists have evidence to say at least since 1000 AD, they are the Dakota, one half of the Sioux Nation, and, after the 1700s, the Ojibwe, also known as Chippewa, members of the Anishinaabe nations. Dakota people have different stories to explain their creation. One widely accepted story says the Dakota emerged from Dote, the confluence of the Minnesota and Mississippi rivers. Dakota are the only inhabitants of the Minneapolis area who claim no other land. They have no traditions of having immigrated. In 1680, cleric Louis Hennepin, who was probably the first European to see the Minneapolis waterfall the Dakota people call Oamni, renamed it the Falls of St. Anthony of Padua for his patron saint. In the Dakota language, the city's name is Bde Oda Uthwengwe, Many Lakes Town. Purchasing most of modern-day Minneapolis, Zebulon Pike made the 1805 Treaty of St. Peter with the Dakota. Pike bought a 9-square-mile, 23 square kilometers, strip of land, coinciding with the sacred place of Dakota origin on the Mississippi south of St. Anthony Falls, with the agreement the U.S. would build a military fort and trading post there and the Dakota would retain their land use rights. In 1819, the U.S. Army built Fort Snelling to direct Native American trade away from British-Canadian traders, and to deter warring between the Dakota and Ojibwe in northern Minnesota. The fort attracted traders, settlers, and merchants, spurring growth in the surrounding region. Agents of the St. Peter's Indian Agency at the fort enforced the U.S. policy of assimilating Native Americans into mainstream American society, asking them to give up subsistence hunting and cultivate the land. Missionaries encouraged Native Americans to convert from their religion to Christianity. Under pressure from U.S. officials in a series of treaties, the Dakota ceded their land first to the east, and then to the west of the Mississippi, the river that runs through Minneapolis. Dakota leaders twice refused to sign the next treaty until they were paid for the previous one. In the space of 60 years, the U.S. had seized all of Dakota land. In the decades following these treaty signings, the federal U.S. government rarely honored their terms. After closing in 1858, the University of Minnesota was revived using land taken from the Dakota people under the Morrill Land Grant Acts in 1862. At the beginning of the American Civil War, annuity payments owed in June 1862 to the Dakota by treaty were late, causing acute hunger among the Dakota. Facing starvation, a faction of the Dakota declared war in August and killed settlers. Serving without any prior military experience, U.S. Commander Henry Sibley had raw recruits. Among them, the only mounted troops were volunteers from Minneapolis and St. Paul with no military experience. The war went on for 6 weeks in the Minnesota River Valley. Some terrified American settlers traveled 80 miles, 130 kilometers, away from the massacre to Minneapolis for safety. After a U.S. kangaroo court, 38 Dakota men died by hanging as ordered by Abraham Lincoln. The Army marched 1,700 non-hostile Dakota men, women, children, and elders 150 miles, 240 kilometers, to a concentration camp at Fort Snelling. Minneapolitans reportedly threatened more than once to attack the camp. In 1863, the U.S. abrogated and annulled all treaties with the Dakota. With Governor Alexander Ramsey calling for their extermination, most Dakota were exiled from Minnesota. While the Dakota were being expelled, Franklin Steele laid claim to the east bank of St. Anthony Falls, and John H. Stevens built a home on the west bank. Residents had divergent ideas on names for their community. In 1852, Charles Hogue proposed combining the Dakota word for water, MNI, with the Greek word for city, polis, yielding Minneapolis. In 1851, after a meeting of the Minnesota Territorial Legislature, leaders of East Bank St. Anthony lost their bid to move the capital from St. Paul. In a close vote, St. Paul and Stillwater agreed to divide federal funding. St. Paul would be the capital, while Stillwater would build the prison. The St. Anthony contingent eventually won the state university. In 1855, with a charter from the legislature, Steele and Associates opened the first bridge across the Mississippi. The toll bridge cost pedestrians 3 cents, 98 cents in 2023. In 1856, the territorial legislature authorized Minneapolis as a town on the Mississippi's west bank. Minneapolis was incorporated as a city in 1867, and in 1872, it merged with St. Anthony. Minneapolis developed around St. Anthony Falls, the only natural waterfall on the Mississippi, which was used as a source of energy. A 1989 Minnesota Archaeological Society analysis of the Minneapolis riverfront describes the use of water power in Minneapolis between 1880 and 1930 as the greatest direct drive water power center the world has ever seen. Minneapolis earned the nickname Mill City. The city's two founding industries, lumber and flour milling, developed in the 19th century nearly concurrently. Flour milling overshadowed lumber for some decades. Nevertheless, each came to prominence for about 50 years. The city's first commercial sawmill was built in 1848, and the first gristmill in 1849. A lumber industry was built around forests in northern Minnesota, largely by lumbermen emigrating from Maine's depleting forests. Towns built in western Minnesota with lumber from Minneapolis sawmills shipped their wheat back to the city for milling. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel and click the notification bell so you get notified each time we upload a new video. See you in the next one.